Ross Bolen Podcast. You better listen.
Welcome back to the Ross Bolen Podcast, otherwise known as RBP, presented by Bolen Media. I am your host, Ross Bolen, back again with your co-host, as always, Chris Coulson. Chris, how are you feeling on this fine Monday morning?
Oh, just fighting the good fight.
The good fight, not the bad fight.
Yeah, fighting the good fight against my personal allergies and my body actively attempting to kill me.
And Mother Nature.
Yeah. But hey, you got to appreciate, when you feel like this, it really makes you appreciate the days when you walk outside and you're just, you don't.
And you
don't,
can breathe,
yeah,
and you don't sound like that, because that was horrible.
That was terrible.
That was awful.
That's what I'm
Never
saying.
do that again.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're new here, our comedy podcast has been around for a few years now. Every week on Monday and Wednesday, we discuss mental health, current events, sports, music, history, animals, and more right here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, or wherever you are watching and or listening. Today, we have a very special show for you. Arguably the biggest episode in the history of this podcast.
Huge.
And it wouldn't be right if we didn't start that episode out with an incredibly silly and mildly inappropriate ad read from one of our beloved sponsors. So RBP 339 is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped is back, and every man knows the penis and balls were not designed in a way that makes them easily groomable.
No.
It's like an elephant trunk atop two walnuts trapped in a skin sack, dangling between your legs. No direction, no real leadership, just aimlessly swinging and banging, and man, that's no good. You need to be fresher down there than anywhere. Your dick and balls are where you should be at your absolute best, arguably even more important presentation-wise than your silly-ass face, which is why Manscaped is here to change you and your disgusting pubic region's life. The Lawnmower 3.0 is the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology, your snags will be reduced. Nobody wants snags.
No.
They actually just released their Shears 2.0 nail kit, which is the perfect add-on to their Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer. The Shears 2.0 is a luxury 4-piece nail kit featuring tempered stainless steel tools, and it includes slashed-tipped tweezers, rounded point scissors, fingernail clippers, and a medium grit nail file. Their Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0, waterproof cordless body trimmer, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag for you to use when we're done quarantining. It's incredible. Manscaped is awesome. You get 20% off and free shipping with the code RBP when you go to manscaped.com. That's Manscaped, manscaped.com. Code RBP, 20% off, free shipping. Don't know why you wouldn't do it. Don't know why you wouldn't do it.
And let me just say, those performance boxer briefs, man.
Oh, they're comfy.
Woo, baby.
Oh, they're comfy.
I don't know what they're made of, but it's like slipping on pure Italian silk.
Ooh.
It's nice and cupping and very tight-fitting, but
I'm
in
quite
a good
confident
way.
they're not made of pure Italian silk,
No, they're not,
just for the
but
record.
they feel like that. Or like, I don't know, Eve's hair from the Garden of Eden. Something like that.
What?
It
Take your
fits.
penis, balls, gooch, and grundle grooming game to the next level with Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com, code RBP, 20% off, free shipping. Do it. Announcements and shouts. Happy birthday, 24th birthday to Levi Andrews. Thank you for the support. Happy birthday to Drew Mercer. Hope you enjoy it. Happy birthday, Tanisha, as well. Chris says, you want to say it?
Yeah, sorry I was drunk and responded, thank you, brother, when you are clearly a sister.
Shouts to
apologize.
Chase for treating himself to a Patreon membership on his birthday. Appreciate you, dude. Because today's episode is a special edition of the show, we'll be doing our regularly scheduled Monday Mental Health Minute on Wednesday this week. So mental health talk on our Wednesday episode of the Ross Bolen Podcast this week. If you want to watch our show and not just listen, if you want to see our shining faces, you can on youtube.com/Bolen Media, where every time we reference youtube.com/Bolen Media, we wave to the camera. And you can watch the entire interview with Joe Jorgensen as well. The entire thing that you will be listening to was also videoed. She was kind enough to take the time to set up her video really quickly, even though we didn't warn her that we wanted to do video. Also, we are live on twitch.tv/BossRollin every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. Twitch is a fun platform where we can live stream, play video games, and you can see Chris and I's faces similarly to how you can on YouTube as we play video games with podcast listeners. Huge shouts to all our supporters on Twitch. We're over 1,100 subscribers. We have a blast playing Call of Duty, Among Us, Apex Legends, Valorant, Fall Guys, and more with podcast listeners every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Central on twitch.tv/BossRollin. First segment, presidential candidate Joe Jorgensen. So we're in the midst of what I would call the most important presidential election in my lifetime.
I would agree.
And there are only 3 candidates for president on the ballot in all 50 states. Current President Donald Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, and our guest today, the Libertarian candidate for POTUS, Dr. Joe Jorgensen. And if you're in the crowd that says, third-party candidate, that's a wasted vote, especially in 2020, well, I literally open with a question regarding that issue, so sit back down. We've spent a lot of time this last several months talking about our responsibility as Americans to become educated on voting, the election process, our candidates at the federal and local levels of government, and thanks to several members of our listenership, we had the opportunity to connect with Joe Jorgensen's camp and request an interview. Dr. Joe was kind enough to not only allow us 20 minutes of her very valuable time this past Friday, but answer several unscreened questions. They did not ask for or approve my questions ahead of time, and she allowed me to go long without pretending to have connection issues and just hanging up like I might have done it had I been in her shoes. She is the Libertarian Party's nominee for President of the United States in the 2020 election, previously the party's nominee for Vice President in the 1996 U.S. presidential election as the running mate of Harry Brown. Her Twitter bio says she's a psychologist, senior lecturer at Clemson University, proud mother and grandmother, and hockey player.
Is that right?
I really wish I had asked about that last part, but here she is, Joe Jorgensen. Dr. Jorgensen, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is very limited, so we'll jump right into our questions if you're ready.
Sure.
I'm not sure how many Americans even realize at this point that there are more than 2 candidates on the presidential ballot, but you are one of 4, the only one not named Trump or Biden to be in all 50 states. And concerns over the effectiveness of a 2-party system have been around forever, my whole life at least, and I'm 33 years old. The concern with a 2-party system seems to be coming to a head during this election, where so many Americans feel they have 2 choices, an elderly white man or an elderly orange man. And many Americans argue a vote for a third-party candidate, such as a Libertarian or a Green Party candidate, such as yourself, is a wasted vote. Right now, I mostly hear Democrats saying that, arguing you're taking a vote away from Biden if you vote for a Dr. Jorgensen. What do you say to people in that boat?
Well, what I say is Trump and Biden don't own your votes, you do, and you get to decide who you pick. And I've had some people accuse me of being a spoiler. Well, if Donald Trump had done everything he said he would do, he came in and said, I'm an outsider, I'm a businessman, I know how to balance a budget, I can cut spending. He has increased the deficit faster than Obama. We've got the biggest debt ever. He's increased spending. And, oh, by the way, he didn't bring the troops home like he said he would. So if Trump had followed through on that, he would win in a landslide. And I would have absolutely no role whatsoever. And people who say I'm spoiling the election, my question is, what do you want? Do you want bigger deficits, bigger debts, or would you like to spend your own money and make your own decisions? And by the way, I tell people that I think that they know best how to spend their money and make the decisions for their family much better than any politician or special interest in Washington.
I tend to agree with you when it comes to the money side of that. But obviously you're not the first third-party candidate to make a dent or to make a run or to get involved in the political theater in America. I'm just curious as to how far away you think we are from seeing an election where a non-Republican, a non-Democrat presidential candidate really competes with the big 2, and what are the steps to getting there?
Well, part of the problem is getting your name out. I don't know if you heard what happened with the polls, but in order to get on the debate stage,
right, you
have to poll 15%. So last election, they put Gary Johnson in the polls early on, and he, and by the way, just getting in the polls adds name recognition, because whenever they report on TV, newspaper, internet, here's the, here's the polls, then it's last time it was, Trump, Hillary, and then Johnson. And people are like, oh, wait a minute, there's a third guy. And then they'd go look him up, and he got increased name recognition, increased votes. Well, we have to, as I mentioned, we have to get to 15% in the polls to be on the debate stage.
Mm-hmm.
He got as high as 13.6. And I think that people were like, oh, that's dangerously close. So what do they do this time around? They don't even put my name in the polls. So how can I be on the debate stage if my name's not even in the polls? Despite that, we've been able to get our name out, and we are working to try to have some other type of debate. And we've got people who are just going to try to publicize it. So we'll see if we can't make a dent this time. We're trying.
You've pointed out that issue before, that the debate commission is obviously run by Democrats and Republicans, and that makes it very difficult for someone like yourself to even get involved. But the debates don't really accomplish much for voters right now, in my opinion, anyway. We never really get any answers. It's all deflections, lies, repeated rhetoric we've heard before. And again, it's felt that way my entire life. How do we fix the election process in America so that voters actually become more informed throughout the voting process rather than drowning in half-truths and lies and silliness to the point that we can't tell who is what?
Well, can I make 2 comments on what you said before I answer
Absolutely.
the question? First of all, you said that, obviously the debate commission, is run by the Democrats and Republicans. Actually, most people don't know that. Most people think that this is some kind of impartial government commission, that if you get a certain hurdle, you get to be on the debate stage. They don't realize that it is a private entity. They have no idea that it's not run by the government. And also, you said being on the debate doesn't accomplish much. Well, it would accomplish name recognition, if nothing else, because most people haven't even heard of me. And I would actually say the last debate did accomplish something. I don't know if you heard, but my website slowed to a halt immediately after the debate, because people, not last night's debate, but the presidential debate, because people are like, oh my gosh, this is our choice. So I would say it did do something. So as I said, we're trying to get outside debates, and 75% of our volunteers are from outside the party. So we are making headway. A lot of people are, the people we can reach who say, I don't want, like you said, and by the way, usually it's old rich white guy. Usually you add the rich in there.
Sure.
But I would say that is the least of the problems, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. The Libertarian Party is obviously built on the idea that Americans can make our own decisions, right, and that we'll do so responsibly.
Well, not necessarily, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess you can clarify for me. But I've never been less confident in the concept that Americans are capable of self-governing their lives than I am right now. And that may just be as a result of the utter chaos of the election combination with COVID. But if you were elected today, how would you act immediately in the handling of the COVID crisis, taking obviously what we've got currently and moving forward from here?
Well, first of all, I would get rid of the obstacles that are still there with the FDA and CDC that's not allowing testing kits. And there are still places where you got to get a doctor's note. And at least as of recently, I'm sure it changes daily. And, the key here is to get tested. And Trump made a big mistake when he said, if you don't have symptoms, don't get tested, because at the time they thought the majority of the people who had the virus didn't have symptoms. Okay, that's when you need to get tested. So I would open that up. And also the spending. Everybody says, oh, isn't this great? I get a $1,200 check. Well, it's not coming from Trump's pocket, despite the fact that the checks were delayed so he could put his name on it. But some of that money in that package is going to corporations and their buddies and the people who already have power. And what I say is, let's leave the money in our hands. And I got to tell you, I would spend my money at a local mom and pop store who is forced to stay closed, who is forced to shut down, while these big corporations were allowed to stay open.
Are mask mandates, I know you've spoken to this before, do you still see them as unconstitutional?
Well, let me tell you what I believe, because as far as unconstitutional, it depends on how it's used. First of all,
Okay.
government absolutely has the right to say, okay, in our courthouse, in our government building, we require masks.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, just like just about everything else, the free market can do such a better job. And I prefer that people vote with their feet or vote with their dollars, to where they make a decision every day. And there's an underlying assumption, and you kind of mentioned this before. You said that you're not sure that people are ready to self-govern. There is an underlying assumption that if the government doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. But Walmart proved that wrong with, they required a mask. It doesn't matter what state, doesn't matter what the laws are. If you're coming in our store, you have to wear a mask. And then other stores quickly followed suit. So why not, instead of a one size fits all, which, we're seeing, I just saw a clip of, people literally assaulting each other for not having a mask.
Right.
How about, if you want to wear a mask, if you think that's a good idea, shop at Walmart or one of the any other many stores who require it. If you don't want to wear a mask, you should be able to shop at another store that doesn't require it. Why don't we let people make their own decisions?
I guess my rebuttal question to that would be, if we saw a spike as a result of, say, I have a friend who just utterly refuses to wear a mask. He just got banned from a CVS, in fact, which is neither here nor there, for not wearing a mask. But if we saw a spike as a result, let's say we did go the route of letting people self-govern. You could, pick the businesses that make sense for you. If you want to wear a mask, don't want to wear a mask, do your thing, yada, yada, yada. And we continued to see a rise in cases. What's the next step then?
Well, first of all, in other words, see a rise in cases in a virus.
Sure, I know that right now that's kind of
people than the flu. So should we all wear masks so that people don't die of the flu? And around late April, May, there was a poll that was done, because by then some of the states had been closed and they were opening up. And there was a poll that asked people, are we opening up too soon? And something like 70% of the people said yes. So I'm not seeing anything from people that says all of a sudden we're going to have a mass rebellion, except these college parties. And they're in an age group that, again, death rate is lower than the flu. Do we not let college students have parties because they might get the flu?
Sure. Okay. Fair question. I'm going to move on to the next thing, just because the mask stuff and COVID in general just seems to be such a loop-de-loop that I can't make sense of what is what anymore. But we all know social media has given rise to a multitude of new issues in our society, even now affecting our elections. And you have spoken to this in the past as well. Do you still believe platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., have the right to set their own rules regarding the content published to their platforms, and that regulating social media is a bad move?
Sure, they have the right. They're a private company, just like Walmart has the right to say you have to wear a mask. Even if the law says you don't have to, we say you have to. We've got restaurants, no shirt, no shoes, no service. So that's what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that I think they're doing a good job. I think they're being stupid. They put themselves out as we're the town square, we want to have open, honest discussion, and it's not. I'm just saying that the free market will do a better job of putting them in its place. And a lot of people forget about the antitrust case against IBM back in the because, and by the way, I worked for IBM in the early 80s when they dismissed the trust case. It had been going on for 13 years. Supposedly the Justice Department created enough paperwork to go to the moon and back, or at least to the moon, and they still weren't able to break them up. And who was able to, and by the way, think about this, IBM, they had big manufacturing plants, and that was the argument. How can anybody compete with IBM? Because they've got all this capitalization. They've got, all of these manufacturing plants that nobody else has the money to even build these plants. And now we're talking about Facebook. How much money does it cost to start a social media site? So just like with IBM, it wasn't the government that broke them up. It was two guys in their garage who started Apple. I'm waiting for the next person, and I understand how young people go, oh, but Facebook, that's so big. Nobody could ever break up Facebook. That's what they said about IBM. That's what they said about AT&T, although the government did step in there, but that's because it was a government regulated monopoly. But once they opened that up, then we had a lot of competition from other companies. So I think just a lot of people haven't seen that, yes, monopolies can be broken up in the free market. This is a big if.
Sure.
If the government isn't giving them special privileges, isn't giving them money, and we see Zuckerberg down there, talking to Congress all the time. That's my concern. It's not that, he can't be broken up. It's that,
he's so involved at this point.
Special treatment. Right.
The thing that concerns me when I look at social media, and I have one more question for you. I realize you need to go shortly. I see a growing number of Americans being sucked into conspiracy theories like QAnon and the like, and a lot of that's the result of misinformation on Facebook, which ties me back to the beginning of our conversation where I'm concerned with Americans' ability to self-govern. And right now, if you can't determine truth from untruth on the internet, that's very problematic. And so when I look at it's like, at what point is your platform so large and so influential that there does need to be some kind of government regulation? Or is there any point, or is it just period, we let the free market decide what information is dispersed and where?
Yeah, first of all, let me start off by saying there is no utopia. And you said it's hard to tell fact from fiction on the internet. So you're going to trust politicians to decide?
No, absolutely not.
And fiction instead, because it's either the free market or it's the government. And if you recall, was it Adam Schiff who got taken in by those two comedians pretending to be Russian spies? They punked him. And we've got Nancy Pelosi saying we're gonna have to pass the bill before you can see it. It's like, yeah, you might get wrong information on the internet, but how about the government saying you don't deserve any information at all? We're going to pass these bills without even telling you what's in them. At least give us the fighting chance to find out what we're doing with our lives. So, again, is there a perfect solution? No, but I would suggest a free market is better than letting, the lobbyists in Washington take care. And by the way, keep in mind, there are lobbyists who are writing the bills for, basically there are corporations who are writing the bills for Congress. In fact, I read a story, this was pretty funny, that remember we had the whole essential worker thing when we were deciding who could go to work.
Yes.
And the lobbyists were saying we're essential because we write the bills, and without us, Congress isn't going to be able to write their own bills. So, again, do you want that, or do you want the free market in which you get to make a decision? And by the way, if I were a lobbyist, I think I would have just kept my mouth shut and and said, you're right, not essential.
I have one more question. You've spoken to a police inability to handle societal issues like homelessness and mental illness and poverty. Under your administration, what steps would be taken to start mending the relationship between law enforcement and our citizenry? And do you have a plan for police reform in America?
Well, I see those as two different things. There's about 4 questions there.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're very good at multi-part questions. Has anybody ever told you that?
No.
So first of all, let me just talk about the homelessness and mentally ill and substance abusers on the street that are homeless.
Yes.
I'd like to point out that back in the olden days we had what we called mental institutions, and then the government decided in the early 60s, this isn't humane. What we need to do is we need to open up community centers and allow community centers to handle them on a walk-in basis instead of pretty much locking them up in a mental hospital,
right,
as they call them. Well, what they did was they opened up all the doors and let out all the patients before the community centers were even built. So that kind of goes back to answering your question. Would I rather have an internet where I have to decide the truth, or have a government who doesn't even know you got to build the community centers first? And by the way, the largest group of mentally ill in the entire country is in Cook County Jail in Chicago, Illinois.
Wow.
So I would say that charity can best handle that, and I've got my stories for that. But if you want me to move on to the policing quickly,
sure.
I would say that crime is a local issue, and it should be the local people who decide. We've got federal government in way too much. So let's let the police departments the city council, the mayor, the taxpayers, the voters. Let them decide what kind of police they want. Instead, we've got the federal government handing out tanks, free tanks, and tear gas and grenade launchers. So think about it. And you're in Austin, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if they had a referendum in Austin and they said, okay, or really any city in America, but let's use your city. They have a referendum that says, okay, would you like your taxes increased so we can buy a tank for our police department? Most people would say no. I'd rather keep that extra money, maybe go to a nicer dinner, have a nicer vacation. But instead, the federal government takes our money, it goes to Washington, and then the federal bureaucrats dangle, the free tanks and say, hey, do you want a free tank? And of course, the Austin police or whatever police department, they're going to say, sure, I'll take it because it's free. We paid for it. And I certainly don't want, those people in Alabama to get it. It's our taxpayer dollars. So that's how we end up with stuff we don't want. We're having our money spent on stuff we don't want. I would rather, again, let the local police department and let the citizens there decide how much they want to spend on policing. And remember, my field is psychology. Having, what used to be kind of a local beat officer who knows everybody by name to protect and serve, like on the cop cars community. Now it's an us versus them, because now, thanks to the federal government, we're practically training our police departments to be soldiers.
Right.
And I don't want to be at war with other countries around the world. I certainly don't want to be at war here. I would try to get back every tank I could if I were president, every grenade launcher, every tear gas, and I would stop this program, and I would tell localities, you get to make your own decisions, because you in Austin, you in Tallahassee, Florida, you in Jackson Hole, you know best what you need for your city, not the people in Washington.
And in regard to the sort of, I guess, the way the police department, the police issue in America this year in 2020 in particular has been tied to racial issues and the racial divides in this country that, in my opinion, and President Trump has clearly stoked. How do you go about fixing that? Like, what is the... I know that's a very complicated question. I mean, from a general sense, though, what is your approach to the racial issues in this country?
Well, I think it'd be easier for me to go back and answer the charity question. But, we've had systemic racism built into the policing system. Mm-hmm. Even right now, drugs that people of color use have longer prison sentences than those who don't, or those who, whites. And even though whites and blacks use drugs at about the same rate, 6 times as many blacks are locked up. And so we got to get rid of that. And what I would do to start, and by the way, I'd like to point out, I have met with Black Lives Matter leaders, and the Libertarian Party agrees with many of the problems that Black Lives Matter is pointing out, such as we got to get rid of no-knock raids, no-knock laws. We got to get rid of qualified immunity. We got to get rid of this racist and destructive war on drugs. So we agree on the problem. We just don't agree on the solution. And unfortunately, Black Lives Matter, they think the answer is more government. They're almost Marxist. And I'm saying government is what got us here to begin with. So we got to stop that. So I think the answer is smaller government. And the first thing I would do is I would get rid of the war on drugs. And I would let anybody at the federal level who's accused of a victimless crime out. And I would encourage states to do the same thing because it disproportionately affects Black. I would work to remove qualified immunity, no-knock raids, and the war on drugs so that we can live peacefully with each other. I want a drug peace, not a drug war.
That's fair. Doctor, thank you so much for the time.
We
appreciate it very much. I know you need to move on with your day, and I hope you have a great weekend again. We very much appreciate it. Dr. Jorgensen.
And can I mention my website's joe20.com?
Yes, ma'am.
And about 75% of our volunteers are from outside the party because I realize the system doesn't work. So take a look at us, and hopefully it won't be crashing after another bad debate by the D's and R's. So,
we'll be plugging your website and your social media everywhere too, and it really does mean a lot that you took the time to spend with us today. Thank you for trying to answer my multi-pronged questions as best you could. I appreciate it.
I love them. I'm a teacher. I love them. We'll see ya.
Have a great weekend, Doctor.
You do. Thanks.
All right, there you have it. I interviewed a presidential candidate, the only one on the ballot in all 50 states that's not Trump or Biden. Chris, how'd I do?
You know, Ross, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with your interview skills on a very professional level like that. Not that, like, I was taken aback or anything like that, but you went in, I mean, I was with you going into the studio, although I was not in the studio.
Sure.
And you definitely had a little bit of nerves, and you went in there, and I think you crushed it.
It was definitely the most nervous I've ever been, maybe for anything I've ever done. Maybe.
That's what you're saying.
I was shook, but then I just kind of blacked out.
Yeah, you walked out in like a haze.
Yeah.
Fog just
Yeah.
rolled out from the steam of perspiration off of your body, from the mental fortitude of your questioning and leading her in the directions of justice and liberty for all.
Sure. Huge thanks again to Dr. Joe for the time. Go to joe20.com to check out our website, at Jorgensen, the number 4 POTUS, at Jorgensen4POTUS on Twitter, at Jorgensen_2020 on Instagram. Register to vote. Vote early. Vote by mail. Get out there and vote, no matter who you're voting for. Just make sure you're informed, educated, and voting based on your own beliefs, your own thoughts and feelings, not someone else's. If this is your first time listening to the Ross Bolen Podcast, we are stoked to have you here. And in the coming weeks, Chris and I will continue to offer up what we consider to be unbiased election coverage, trying to help people understand how to better inform themselves on their local and national candidates, and how to be just better voters in general, and not just for our listeners, but for me as a 33-year-old man who will be voting in like his, I think, 4th presidential election. Chris as a 21-year-old boy, just a young boy, a small boy.
A wee lad.
Who will be voting in his first ever presidential election.
A young wee lad.
Did you see Shaq voted for the first time?
I believe Snoop did as well.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That is shocking to me. Shaq is a doctor.
Like has his PhD?
Like has a PhD.
Really?
The fact that he had never voted for president is mind-blowing, but it's also very telling, and it's very important for these people who are in their late 40s, into their 50s, these very prominent members of our society and our media who are admitting, like, hey, point blank,
Never voted before.
hand up. I've never done it before. Hand up. Like, that's big, and I think it enables more people who have unfortunately fallen into that crack to also stand up.
Because I feel
and
like
go get involved.
If you've never voted, say you've never voted, you've had the
It starts
opportunity to
become
vote
a
for
thing.
like, yeah, exactly.
It's like how I never learned how to tie a tie.
And at this
I'm
point,
never going to learn how to tie a tie
'cause you don't
because
wanna
at this
know.
point it's a piece of me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to.
it's part of your identity.
Yeah.
So for them to be able to stand up and have somebody to look up to
Well,
be
just
like,
think about it. If you went 40 years and
Without
you never had
voting.
to worry about going to the voting booth
Yeah.
or like, you know what I'm saying? It would just
Yeah.
kind of become a thing. Like, another November, I don't have to move my ass.
well, at that point too, it's like, well, it hasn't mattered to this point. Why would it matter now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it starts to feel that way, right? And that's always the tough thing. There's so many arguments in our democracy. Oh, you're in a red state, your vote doesn't matter anyway. It's like just missing the point entirely of your right as an American to cast a vote for all of these different positions that we vote for each every 4 Novembers.
I kept them.
Every 4th November.
Well, every 2, if you're talking about
Uh,
Senate,
there's all kinds of stuff.
different things.
I'm
different
still
elections.
confused about when some of our local elections even take place, which is, again, why we're going to be talking about this more, because it's very important that we are all the opposite of ignorant when it comes to our public officials. Clearly, for far too long, Americans have had just an uneducated way of going about handling our elections. The way we look at, and I won't say all Americans. Certain subsects of our society
Sure.
are certainly more prone to this level of naivete.
Can't argue with that.
Well-living white people, in particular. If shit's just going well all the time, you don't have a whole lot of motivation to go out and figure out who the fuck's running stuff, do you? Well, a lot of us are starting to realize that maybe not the way to run a country
Maybe not.
or a democracy in general.
Potentially not.
So, 2020, huge election year. We got a presidential candidate on the show. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get Biden. We're not going to be able to get Trump. And even if we did, they'd pre-screen our questions. It'd be the same nonsense you hear everywhere else. So we went with a third-party candidate. We got Libertarian candidate Joe Jorgensen on the show. Got to ask her some questions with no screening. I worked in as many as I could. I hope y'all got some good information out of it. I'm thinking about doing some type of follow-up segment, perhaps on our exclusive ad-free patreon.com/Ross Bolen Podcast episode that comes out this Friday, sort of delving into her answers and what I thought about them.
Sure.
Because it's not like I'm going to sit here and pretend she answered all my questions the way I wanted her to.
Sure.
Or that I got what I thought were good answers to every question. So I would sort of like to be able to give my thoughts and takes on her.
Feedback.
On her, and give some feedback. Yeah, so I haven't really decided. I'd love to hear from y'all if you think that should be on Wednesday's episode, or if that's something that should just be held for Patreon, or if y'all, the general listening population, want to hear it, because there's only about 1,000 people on Patreon. That's a much smaller audience. Y'all are a much, much larger audience here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and the like. So if you are interested in hearing more of my specific feedback to her specific answers, it just is a little weird because she's not there to respond.
Sure.
So I have to do it I have to sit there and take a lot of time to think about doing it in a way that's not unfair to Dr. Jorgensen, obviously. But it is also important that I think that I give my thoughts on some of her answers, some of them that I agree with, and some of them that I didn't agree with, and how that sort of ties to the bigger picture with my beliefs for what's going on in our country and my personal thoughts and feelings on those things. And again, you listen to this show because you obviously care about my opinion in some way, shape, or form, or you're just here because you're a fan of Dr. Jorgensen, and I appreciate you being here as well. But that doesn't mean I want you to take what I say and just directly apply it as your own belief. At any point, I believe it's your responsibility as a human being, and in particular when it comes to politics as an American, to question everything for yourself. And
Absolutely.
Look for your own answers and look for your own opinions. And I don't want everyone to agree with me on everything. That would be awful. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about sometimes.
I would say, correct me if I'm wrong here, but our goal in our political discourse, especially over the last couple weeks, has to be present facts and our opinions in a way that allows our listeners to be able to conclude their own opinions from that and use that information in a healthy way to figure out what they believe in and what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, the sitting president of the United States will always be the most roastable. Always. The guy currently blowing it is always going to be the easiest to make fun of. So if you're looking at it from the perspective of a Republican and you're saying, well, you make fun of Donald Trump a lot more than you do Joe Biden. Yeah, dude, look, he just doesn't stop giving us content to make fun of. It's not like I want this. I don't like talking about Trump as much as I do, honestly. He's just so good at content that I can't not make fun of the ridiculous shit that he does. It's impossible. When Biden does dumb shit, I make fun of that too. You know? It's just, we're in this space, this entertainment space, where I believe it is important to give people laughs, to give people smiles, to give people jokes, but also on a show that is very mental health focused in a year that I believe is imperative that we all make better and more informed decisions. Of course, we're going to take the time to try to delve into some things, especially because for me personally, as a white, Christian, straight American, this is the first year of my life in which my eyes have really been open to some of the larger issues that perhaps I was unaware of their impact before. And some of the ignorance from me personally has started to be lifted, at least I hope. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing this journey, into what it's like. I mean, what it's like to be an American for everyone, for all of the different subsects of our society, all the different races and religions, and that's something that I had kind of lost touch with. Not kind of, in a big way. And I'm just starting to gain it back. And, if there's one silver lining to this whole shitstorm of 2020, this nightmare of an election season we are already in the midst of, millions of Americans having already voted, it's that I think this was a very eye-opening year and an awakening for many people, an opportunity to look at things differently, start to focus on what really matters, and move forward with perhaps a better perspective on themselves and the world. So in the coming weeks, we will continue election coverage. Thank you again for listening to the Joe Jorgensen interview, but this episode is not over yet. Stick around. RBP 339 is also brought to you by Quip, makers of the greatest toothbrush and oral care products in all the land, longtime supporter of this podcast. You've probably heard us talk about Quip a million times. Again, they've supported our show off and on for a very long time, but this is something brand new that rewards you and your mouth. When's the last time you got rewarded for brushing your teeth? Maybe when you were a small child, just a wee lad or lass, and your mom said, I'll give you $1 if you brush your damn teeth, and maybe you did. But with Quip's new smart electric toothbrush, good habits can earn you great perks, like free products gift cards, and more. The Quip Smart Brush, it's for adults and kids, connects to the Quip app with Bluetooth, tracks when and how well you brush. You'll get tips and coaching to improve your habits. You're going to earn points daily for brushing, bonus points for completing challenges like streaks. You can redeem for rewards like products, gift cards, and discounts from Quip and partners. Incredible. And if you already have a Quip like I do, you can upgrade it with a smart motor and keep the features you know and love. Sensitive sonic vibrations, 2-minute timer with 30-second pulses for a guided clean. Love it. Every time you finish brushing, you feel like you've left the dentist. Slim, lightweight, and sleek design with no wires or bulky charger to weigh you down. Multi-use travel cover that doubles as a mirror mount for less clutter. Plus, you can get a brush head, toothpaste, and floss refills delivered for just $5.
$5.
Shipping is free. How smart is that? Join over 5 million mouths who use Quip and save hundreds compared to other Bluetooth brushes. When you get a Quip Smart Brush for just $45, start getting rewards for brushing your teeth today. Go to getquip.com/RBP right now to get your first refill free. That's your first refill free at getquip.com/RBP, GETQUIP.com/RBP. Quip, better oral health made simple and rewarding. Next segment. The only sports news you'll ever need. Chris and I are both big sports fans. Sizable sports guys. Chris is wearing a sports jersey.
I am.
I'm wearing a sports hat.
He is.
So every week we like to make sure we cover the most important stories in sports and give our takes. And today we are not lacking. Last night, LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers, along with Anthony Davis and J.R. Smith, Kyle Kuzma and others, won the NBA championship. The NBA Finals are over. They defeated the Miami Heat. James was named the 2020 NBA Finals MVP. First championship for the Los Angeles Lakers in a decade. Fourth title of LeBron James's career. They won 106-93, but they beat the shit out of the Heat most of the game. It was never close. Nobody was watching in Game 6. James, who previously won Finals MVP in 2012 and 2013 with the Heat, and then again in 2016 with the Cleveland Cavaliers, first player in NBA history to win NBA Finals MVP with 3 different franchises, which is completely insane. To win an NBA Finals MVP in your 17th year is completely insane. For him to pull off the NBA Finals, the NBA championship, the year of Kobe Bryant's passing in a Los Angeles Lakers jersey, completely insane, to the point that it's almost annoying because it's LeBron. And I don't know why. He just has that element to him. He's a little grating. Everybody knows this. The only people who are all in hard, like the only people who don't agree with that are all in psycho LeBron James fans. If you don't agree that LeBron can be a little grating, he can be a little annoying. He can just, you're just like, oh, LeBron. And look, that's in part because he's been around. He's been one of the most famous people in the world his whole career.
17 years.
For 17 years.
17 years.
And I want to say, I am not a LeBron lover. If anything, I can often come off as a hater. But I have more respect for him as a professional athlete than anyone in any sport in my lifetime.
Sure.
Okay? Because I was too young to fully appreciate Michael Jordan. And I don't believe that the talk of GOAT, this, that, who's the best, I don't even think it matters. I am more into the argument that each era gets their own GOAT. Okay? Because there's old heads who sit there and go like, Michael,
Magic.
Kareem.
Yeah.
You know?
Kareem, yeah.
Or whatever. But what LeBron has done, in the fashion in which he has done it, is it different than anybody before him? Yes. I would argue that makes it more cool. That he didn't just stay at one franchise the whole time and just do the thing. He's run around all over the damn league, taking over franchises, getting championships that in some cases don't even feel like wins for the franchise. They just feel like they're wins for LeBron.
100%. Like the win at the Heat, or when he won with the Heat.
The first one.
Yeah. That just felt like a win for LeBron.
I was like, what?
It didn't even feel like a Heat team. It just felt like a LeBron super team.
It's cool that he has these little eras of his career.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean,
Cleveland got to the finals, didn't get it done. Went to Miami, grew up, got a couple, goes back to Cleveland, gets it done, goes to LA, gets it done. I mean, look, it's getting hard to hate.
I mean, LeBron has been dominant from the time that I can remember. Like, literally, from the time that I have memories of my life, LeBron has been dominant in the NBA.
It's insane. It's truly insane.
He's been around my entire life. And I've never been a huge NBA guy, but I don't think at this point you can argue the legacy that he's left behind ever.
It's like, damn you, LeBron James. I am so sick of having to discuss your legacy year after year after year. But the fact is, he's in the finals every fucking season.
What was it last
and
year?
And he's now won 4 of them.
Last year was like the first year. Yeah, it was the first year he hadn't made the final. The first
in
year
like
LeBron,
the last 9 or some
years,
insane shit like that. Like, it's just fucking ridiculous. And somehow, J.R. Smith was on this team. Like, I think he has 3.
He has 2. Shirtless J.R. Smith championship, baby. He's back. And he's bringing Caruso and Kuzma with him. He was a leader on the team, showing real veteran leadership.
Did he rip the shirt off and then they followed?
2 seconds.
Shirtless
2 seconds after.
Smith. Now, here's the thing that you got to remember. Now what we get is at least a month of J.R. Smith drunkenly going, well, damn.
I think he just smokes a lot of weed.
No, because of COVID, there's no fans in the stands. What he did do before, last time they won a ship, and I believe that was in Cleveland together, he went shirtless to, like, Indians games in the playoffs, and like he was just Cleveland Browns games, like he was just going to shit like
shirtless,
and they'd
everywhere.
all be up in the box, and JR would just still be shirtless. It was amazing. He didn't put a shirt on for like a month. But J.R. Smith being on the team, like LeBron just picks dudes and just drags them to glory.
Is J.R. Smith LeBron's special sauce?
He's one of them.
He's got to be.
But no, I mean Anthony Davis was not a bad pickup. And by the way, I would speak to my Houston Rockets for just a moment. In hindsight, not such a bad L, was it?
No.
Everybody, the Rockets they beat the shit out of everybody. These guys pummeled everybody, and we should have seen it coming from a million miles away. When they teamed up, we all went, "Oh shit." And then it was kind of like COVID distracted us. But when it came to the playoffs, it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and they did a good job of putting a good supporting cast, and Vogel did a good job of coaching, and they beat the shit out of everyone. It wasn't close. LeBron didn't even look tired, and he's like 40, and he's been in the league for 17 years, and he still won Finals MVP, and it's insane. His legacy is inarguably as one of the greatest of all time, if not the, and that doesn't just apply to basketball anymore. It applies to sports in general. He's in a pantheon of players, of athletes, that is the highest of high tiers. Anyone who argues otherwise is completely insane.
I will say LeBron's legacy, let's say 50 years from now, will probably be the innovator of the modern athlete.
I mean, and especially, well, we'll see where things go from here technologically, but he was the first guy. I mean, you could argue Kobe maybe, but I wouldn't. LeBron's the first guy to grow up through and enjoy his entire career as part of like the internet and then social media era.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say he's like that's where I was going with the innovator of the modern athlete, using the socials to become more than just a player. He really became a personality and kind of blazed the path in a more individualistic NBA.
And not a perfect person by any means. I would never argue that. But here's the thing: like, throw out something LeBron as a role model has done incorrectly to negatively impact like children or some shit. Name a time he got arrested. Name a time he got caught doing something drunk. You can't.
No scandals.
Like, he has navigated a flawless NBA career after what was, with the decision, one of the biggest gaffes in sports history. That somehow became like a cool part of his story. He has an insanely cool story. His sports story, his career life story, is bonkers. It's incomparable. And the amount of hate he gets as the king in the social media era, he deserves a lot of credit for overcoming that. His legacy to me was cemented probably before this. This is just nuts, though. This is insane. What does it mean for Anthony Davis's legacy? I don't really know. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm not a huge AD guy.
Like, if they can run back or something, like, cool. But, bro, you know.
I mean, I think AD's an elite player, but
but like,
what are
I
people
got
asking
no
that
idea
question? Yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, that you have to start talking about it.
Do you?
First year he jumps to the Lakers, wins a ship. I mean, obviously they're going to be competing again next year. I don't know how many more years LeBron's got in the tank full force, but it's just an interesting thing to look. Anthony Davis, a guy who was largely regarded as one of the best players in the league for many years, couldn't get it done in New Orleans, forces his way to LA, gets the championship. Now what? And I mean, he inarguably stepped up in the playoffs multiple times to show this is my shit too. Just at the end of the day, it's hard to care. about Anthony
what I'm
Davis's
saying.
legacy when you're looking at LeBron winning his
James.
4th.
Yeah.
When you're looking at him having a chance to actually get 5 now.
Well, when you're looking at
Because
what
that
he's
was
done,
that was starting to look unrealistic.
yeah, sure.
And now it's real.
Well, when you start looking at like what he's done, being able to come into new franchises, build a supporting cast, and within a year, 2 years, 3 years, winning championships,
Basically,
or going to
acting as the
championships,
GM or
yeah.
and the coach in a lot of cases, forcing out coaches. It's the LeBron show wherever he goes, and that's the thing that's odd about it. When he was becoming a free agent in Houston, I was thinking to myself, if the Rockets could get LeBron, would I want that, or does it become like his franchise?
Yeah, you're
Because
not.
it's kind of odd.
It is. No, he
Like
absolutely
if he comes
takes
to
over a
Houston
team.
and wins a championship, is like
It's
that
LeBron winning
sits
another
in a
championship.
strange spot.
Yeah.
In the Houston championships.
Absolutely.
Run,
You would
which-
always look back on that, especially if he was only in Houston, say 2-3
for like
years.
a year or two, like
Yeah.
it's one of his little stops.
Yeah.
It's a weird spot, but inarguably one of the greatest
And
athletes
that's-
of all time.
And then that's why I think basketball is such a special sport when you're talking about professional sports, because besides non-team sports like tennis or something like that, basketball is really the only team sport that one player can have that much of an impact, I would argue.
Right.
Like nobody in football, I mean, maybe like, okay, examples like when Peyton Manning went to the Broncos for a year, maybe something like that. But it's
I don't
very,
know about
very
that.
rare in team sports that you can really give one guy the entire show and he takes over the stage. And LeBron does that no matter where he goes, year
Yeah,
after year.
I mean, like in football, you'll see quarterbacks have the most impact on the field out of any one player by far. But if you put a quarterback out there with no offensive line, no receivers, he's screwed.
Yeah, I mean, look at Joe Burrow.
Basketball is just such an interesting sport from the perspective of there's 5 guys on each team on the court at each time. You really get to know the players personally. You're watching everyone on the court involved in every play every time. It's not like, your star wide receiver spends 20% of the game just like buckling up with his cornerback or
Yeah.
some shit. So it's just from that perspective. That's why the NBA is my fave, man.
Sure,
At
sure.
the end of the day, it is my fave. But we will move on from it. Congratulations, Lakers fans. You guys, the worst fan base in sports, perhaps. Major League Baseball has moved on to the League Championship Series in each, what is it? Not division.
Conference?
No. Maybe.
I
Don't
don't-
know. Astros, Rays, Houston Astros, Tampa Bay Rays playing Game 2 this afternoon, Monday afternoon after the Astros dropped Game 1 yesterday evening. Absolutely insane time for an ALCS game in the middle of the afternoon on a Monday. Do they not think we have shit to do? I just don't really get this scheduling from Major League Baseball. It's like, you didn't want to go up against Monday Night Football?
For a Sunday night, by the way, last night was a euphoric sports experience.
chaos.
We had football, basketball, and
baseball.
baseball. Basketball and baseball, both of which were entering either into title games or to play into a title game.
Sure.
Shit show of sports, but it was incredible to watch.
It was incredibly stressful.
for you.
It
I didn't
was
really
incredibly
have-
strong. It was a
Your
low-scoring
Texans
game.
finally won yesterday, by
Texans
the way.
finally
Didn't
got a
even
win. That
touch
was
NFL
huge.
yet.
Fired Bill O'Brien, and the Texans got a win. But before we move on to football,
Sorry.
Braves-Dodgers game 1 is tonight as well. So it's Astros-Rays, Braves, and Dodgers. Those are the 4 teams remaining in Major League Baseball competing to get to the World Series. In the NFL, we continue the COVID shit show. We have Monday and Tuesday night football this week thanks to COVID. Still unsure about Tuesday happening. It's kind of up in the air. Fantasy sports, again, total nightmare of a mess.
Sure.
Everybody trying to figure out how to handle all this. Biggest news of the weekend, other than the Texans finally getting a win after Bill O'Brien was let go. Cowboys' Dak Prescott suffered the worst injury of the weekend.
Yeah, it
At
was-
least of star players, a compound fracture and dislocation of his right ankle that required surgery last night. Unfortunate. Obviously hope he recovers quickly, although I hate the Cowboys. They suck. It doesn't matter. I hope he recovers quickly and gets his money.
Looked
Believe he's
brutal.
a free agent next year. That's very bad timing. Andy Dalton, though, the Red Rocket steps in, gets the Cowboys the victory, and I feel like I know someone who struck out Andy Dalton in high school, just fanned his ass, sat him down, sent him back to the dugout. Oh, it was me still.
Oh, shit.
It was still me. What else? Panthers won again?
They did. We actually got the Falcons head coach and GM fired.
Well, no, you didn't, but they did.
Matt Rule came in there, Angel of Death style, and nailed it in the coffin.
That'd be like arguing whoever beat the Texans last got Bill O'Brien fired. No, Bill O'Brien got Bill O'Brien fired over the course of several very shitty seasons, as did everyone in Atlanta, and God save the Falcons, one of the worst franchises in sports over the past few years to be a fan of. Holy shit. I'm happy for them. Look, when things are bad, fire everyone. It's not that hard.
So
it's
Ross,
really not that difficult.
Ross and I were talking about this yesterday, though. Like, teams have always been shitty, but this year, owners are just like firing everybody left and right. I think they're just done with this shit.
I don't agree with this take. It's just that you're seeing the culmination of several franchises having very long and terrible runs. Like, those two coaches had their chances.
True.
Those two GMs weren't new. Well, again, for the Texans, Bill O'Brien filled all of these different roles. We only had to fire one guy, you see, because he had all of the jobs.
Yeah.
And again, we won the first game after he was gone. We were 0-4. Wait, are the Falcons winless?
Yeah, they're 0-5.
What a pathetic year.
Yeah. After blowing 2 20-point-plus leads, I want to say.
Remember when they almost won the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
When everybody thought they had
No,
won
it's been all downhill from there.
I'm sorry. If you're in Atlanta listening, I know we have a sizable Atlanta listenership, and I apologize for what right now is just torture.
As a Carolina fan, we played the Falcons twice a year, every year, because we're in the same division. The Falcons have been a great program year after year until, like, the year after they went to the Super Bowl, and it's been, like, an extremely sharp decline very quickly.
I mean, that's hard to recover from,
and it's been brutal
mentally.
But then there was I believe last year or 2 years ago, you had the Falcons lose that Super Bowl, and then right as the college football season started again the next year, Georgia was upset at home, ranked number 3 from unranked South Carolina, who was notoriously shit. And then I believe the Braves were like either really, really terrible or got upset early in the play. It was just like a complete fall apart of Atlanta sports as a whole. Like
Georgia?
I feel so bad for my Atlanta sports friends. It's been a brutal last 2 years for you guys.
Georgia.
3 years. Prayers out.
They'll always have that song, though, which makes everything better. Anyway, between the NFL, college ball, and the Major League Baseball playoffs, there's no shortage of games to watch right now, obviously. Thousands of lines available on all your favorite sports and events at MyBookie.ag, our sports betting sponsor. You can turn your game day into payday. MyBookie.ag. If you're the type of guy who likes to bet on the big favorites, consider putting a couple in a parlay for a much bigger payout. They give you a chance to turn ordinary bets into a real moneymaker. Do not forget the underdogs. They have a ton of value. It's the year of the comeback, and it might be the year of the underdog in the sports world, where home field advantages have all but ceased to exist in many cases, and dogs are barking. Game spreads, championship futures, player prop bets. It's never too late to get in on the action and start turning your sports knowledge into actual cash in your wallet. Sign up at MyBookie, and when you do, use our promo code RBP to claim a deposit match $1 for $1 all the way up to $1,000. That's a 100% deposit bonus when you use the code RBP at sign up on mybookie.ag. Stipulations apply, and when you use the code RBP at sign up, again, you will get a 100% deposit bonus up to $1,000. You have to gamble X amount before you're going to get the opportunity to cash out. If they give you free money and then you could immediately cash out, that would be a very bad business model for any casino. So you have to play a little bit before you can get any money out if you use the deposit bonus. But mybookie.ag, code RBP, $1 for $1 match, 100% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Stipulations apply. It's a bonus designed to give you a little help and a head start on your winning season. We've got stacked UFC cards, presidential prop bets, all the major sports and more at mybookie.ag, code RBP. Sign up today to begin your winning season. Before you head out to take on the world, it's time for some very important announcements. If you are new here and you didn't know it, as a result of having listened to this entire podcast, you've been saddled with 3 legal obligations. First is to rate and review. I don't care where you watch or listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube. Just rate and review. Whatever that means. Figure it out. 2-3 sentences, 5 stars. Tell people why you love the show. Hit enter. Best place to do that is Apple Podcasts. Appreciate y'all. Rate and review. Check that box. Move on to your legal obligation number 2. Tell a person about this show. One person this week. It could be a friend, a family member, a neighbor, a coworker. Tell them about the Joe Jorgensen interview. Hey, on the Ross Bolen Podcast, this podcast I listen to, they interviewed the only presidential candidate on the ballot in all 50 states that's not named Donald Trump or Joe Biden. You should give it a listen. Boom. You fulfilled legal obligation number 2. You can check that box and move on to number 3, your final one, which is to support our sponsors who keep this show both showing and growing. Manscaped.com, code RBP. Get your downstairs mix-up fixed up. Quip. GetQuip.com/RBP. Brush your teeth and brush them well. The best. I love Quip. I've been using it for four-ish years now, I think. GetQuip.com/RBP. And, of course, our sports betting sponsor, MyBookie.ag. Code RBP to claim that bonus when you sign up. Those are your 3 legal obligations. Fulfill them. I'll call off the dogs. We won't have to see each other in court or rack up any outrageous lawyer fees. We can all live long and prosper. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Instagram at the Ross Bolen Podcast. We're on Twitter at Ross Bolen Pod. We're also on Facebook.com/Ross Bolen Podcast. My name is Ross Bolen, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at WRBolen, at WRBOLEN. And as I said at the top of the show, we're live on Twitch.tv/Boss Rollin. That's Ross Bolen with the B and the R reversed every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. We usually play for about 3 or 4 hours. Chris, where can everybody follow you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Q0ULS. You can find me on Instagram at ChrisSC99. And you can find me on Snapchat at Chris_Coulson, COULSON.
Yeah. Also follow at Trash License Plates on Instagram. Coles is running our Trash License Plates account where we take all the best Snapchats that you guys send us to our individual Snapchat accounts. We put them up on our Instagram story at the Ross Bolen Podcast on Instagram. Every day is filled up with the best Snapchats sent in by our listenership.
Only the best.
Oftentimes those are very funny vanity license plates, and so we started our own Instagram account just for that, which is just good fun. Check out Bolen Media's television and film podcast. Again, this podcast is the Ross Bolen Podcast. My name is Ross Bolen. My company is Bolen Media. We also have a TV and film podcast called Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, formerly the #1 Game of Thrones podcast in the realm. We, after Game of Thrones ended, decided, wow, this is too much fun. We have a huge listenership. Let's shift. Let's talk general entertainment, TV, and film every week. And Barrett Dudley and I have a blast doing that. He's been my friend for about 17 years, and now we host Oysters, Clams, and Cockles together each and every week. Right now we're discussing Lovecraft Country on HBO, the debut season, the finale this week, I believe. Amazon's The Boys, Season 2 is out. We're discussing The Boys. It's phenomenal. Anybody watching, come listen to OCC, otherwise known as Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. And, of course, we're covering Yellowstone Season 2 right now. Catching back up on Yellowstone. We never watched it. We're finally catching up. Stoked about it. Outrageous. Basically a fucking soap opera on a ranch. And that will do it for RBP 339, produced by Mike Moody Garcia of Permanent Record Studios in Austin, Texas. Chris and I will be back on Wednesday with RBP 340, and of course on Friday on patreon.com/Ross Bolen Podcast with another exclusive premium ad-free episode for dues-paying members of the RBP gang, as we call them, pledging their monthly support to keep the podcast alive. Minimum of just $5 monthly on patreon.com/Ross Bolen Podcast to get a Friday episode every week, ad-free, exclusively right there on Patreon. Come through, support the show, get more RBP. If you're on Patreon, you already had the opportunity to listen to and watch the Joe Jorgensen interview because I posted it late last night just for people on Patreon to get exclusively many hours in advance of the general population. And that's what we'll be doing more and more to show our thanks and appreciation to everyone financially backing the show on patreon.com/Ross Bolen Podcast. Huge episode today. Please share it with as many people as you can. Word of mouth is the #1 way we continue to grow as a show. And the bigger we get, the more incredible guests we can pull in. The more likely it is that one day we can get to somebody like a Trump or a Biden and sit them down with perhaps out any pre-screened No, that's impossible. I'm just kidding. But, yeah, we appreciate y'all. A special thanks to everybody who helped us get Dr. Joe Jorgensen on the show. Again, obviously a very big deal for us. Was an honor to interview her, and I'm looking forward to giving some more feedback on how our conversation went either Wednesday or Friday. I haven't decided. Holler at me at WR Bolen. Let me know how you think I did. Let me know what you thought about Joe's answers. Tag her on social media. Get a conversation going. She's more than willing and happy to hear your feedback. I'm sure would love to hear it. You are not alone. Podmen get paid. Respect Mr. Park. Strength and honor. Gang, gang, gang. Peace be with you. And also with you.